Alright, asam 당시 쉐마도 시행 관계자 아니 펜바 요마레 세데 아니 먼저 두시네스 루 데네자 니고랑서 섬다리 제사다 저 시에딜레 타쳐바레 제사 시용도 단 라와 메바레 시리급라 소수기 년예도 기위 신예 파모 분자라서 가르위네 디스 차상어도 님도 취제 안겨와 치말에 판도 두야 가요 말해서 제사 인데네게 안디멤베 소소균으로 자 첨부까지 여배네 디차상 샤샤 줘야마도 안에 가야 민도 와스베 삼다다 안에 디마세 랑기 류 자첨부 랑다 렌지 뒤기디네다 기네 손데 마시바도 님도 되게 류디야 안 바샤샤 주고도 와스 진짜 디네 인자다는 시디가로 가르고서는 다 셈지부 주고도 와스 다 셈지부 줘봐자다 셈기 때도 아저기 마시위 선배ring 되라 디바까지 제나 아저 셈기 때도 디바데 하되어래 개와 가지 제면에 개위기 뉴바데 하되어래 제자다 셈로도 딩이디 주고 와레스 디베샤베 디바디게 담 나줄이야 개와치마 판도에 잡려야 뇌야마도요 말디 나설 마티 동안요에 디바도메 바 강아데 최고래 제자디 팽기요 말와스 내 팽야데 가르쳐장 아주 체델이야 개와 같이 싸바이네 디 뉴바데 셈기 때도 샤요래 제자 디기 뉴발 때네 개와치마데 안 덴돌레기양 먼저 고바토 덴델이네 안지 루심티기요야 안 덴디라 개외 자오 줍토야 랑기데 안지기 잠니제 냠네 제투야다 샹레야 펜버주도에 되니기 다 직된캬바전 토야다 덴딜레 디규주야 덴디 덴리야 안지기 잠니지 전슈스물라소바 냠는 지역이 다 되니기 판도 용해야 되다 수체들이야 개와지바들 디 판도우도 제사다 개와마도 신 관계다 판도우면 도와 제사다 개와디 판도우도 와선비 두진의 삼다제 되니 약보지 된 하고요도 어다디 자다니 세델이야 년이도 강하게 향원을 마소와게 최지 마진의 탑미도 집에 냠는데 지기 선배다 셈리야 타주지 타주바 되니게 삼나다 야나야다 땅고리에 사정도 가상 디고 쉬버로
Good morning. Last night, we continued to look at this crucial presentation on the impermanence of this life. So in previous weeks, we've looked at the first of these three roots, which is that our death is inevitable, it is certain. We've looked at the second root, which is that the time of our inevitable death, though, is completely uncertain. One cannot say with any degree with complete precision who will die first amongst us. Then last night, we came to recognize that when our inevitable death befalls us, all those we've developed close and dear relationships with, and all our possessions which we've acquired through such hardship, and we value so, none of them will be able to offer us any support when our need is greatest. When we are at our most vulnerable, all that we've accrued, those people we've relied upon, the possessions we've accumulated, none of them can help us when we are at our most vulnerable. Moreover, we looked at last night that when our death comes, our consciousness does not cease, but it continues to the future rebirth. And whilst it leaves behind all our dear friends and our loved ones and our valued possessions, our karmic imprints, they accompany our consciousness. Those karmic imprints that we accrued over the entirety of our lifetime, those karmic imprints we accrued whilst developing or cultivating relationships with others, whilst accumulating our wealth and our possessions, those imprints alone are what accompany us. And it's those imprints that determine where we'll be born and the circumstances of that new life. Reflecting on this final point then, we come to see that all that is important in this life is actually the accumulation of virtuous imprints that will help us in lives to come. And in ensuring we do not accumulate non-virtuous imprints, which will only harm us in lives to come. So this reflection then on the impermanence of this life brings us to the point where we see where we put our time and energy, whether into relationships, whether it's into accruing possessions, caring for this body, gathering worldly knowledge about events and so forth. All of this will be left behind, but the imprints we accrued whilst gathering that, they will accompany us. And therefore, this aids us to develop the determination to focus on lives beyond this. And when we can lift our mind up from the mundane daily affairs, we get and start to think about lives beyond this. This is when we develop a strong enough focus to not only accrue imprints for good rebirths, but to genuinely strive to gain freedom from samsara, to genuinely strive to become a bodhisattva for the sake of others. So this is why this chapter is so important, and this is as far as we've come to look.
Dine ge du shi na ju ge sam da jie ba je du shi jie ba che yan du ka bla sam da jie ba che du dine ju ge ta ma de ya o da ji shi du ka bla che ma do xian gang ge pan do min do a sen be de nge ba ding ni nye ba ji yong go ro da je za dine ge sam lo ya nge ba ding ni nye ba che ba ne de yum zen sam da jie ba che dine ta ma ya dine ge di re do a sen be sam lo da ha go ya du dine di sam lo de ten bu cha go ro wa ten bu cha ba yin za de chuen yam nen che ge de du ba ti ha temple gorwa denege ni so shira ha mogo ba na ngajugi jeba che denege samtane gyumjen de ha mogo na da de ngaju chik adanga chue chigi chigi se che jebe na temple shira me bare ane ya ji shenda chigi geshe shira oda dene du se tralare go ta de chi chemasun dene go sim gyua joyege nyanga che yorwa susu gyumjen 통고 말아 다 수수기 두 jeba che gyumjen samta de 소수기 분자 티야미도 년이도 티야미도 소수 규제라 티야미 소수기 다 류데 케미도 제사다 케데 셈데 조데가 개와 제바디 팽기도 와선베게 제바제 셈데 녜바 템보지 하고서나 되는 체면 녜바 녜바 또 봐세우라 되는 하고서나 되는 yengi kana shebene gohor anten yengi de gyotya mereda da gidi ne sosoge odadi noayama de tendere asebege mar dene ada chege yengi oda chue de yomar chue de yomar enjega yomar pando yomar dine shebene gyotya mere 가서 소소게 김전 통으로 받아 소소게 변에 지게 제마카라디 가모 임바사제 뇽사와네 미젠다제 가모 가제 요말랍네 수스균이 이식 말와 미케바레 게라 쳔보레 수이네 가모 요말스 셰베네 쥐네 이식 말데데 가모링에 하고 소스므로와 어디나시 당아주 두스치네 제바서 삼다베네 두스당고고레스 두스다베네 데네 소슬리아다 최디 마진데 탑미도 셈비 최지디게 되니 둠바디 네 야고시 리기데 송고르와다 도나 인보도 송고레
And each of the three routes in the presentation on the impermanence of life concludes with a reason. The first route, that our death is certain, leads one to the decision, I have to practice the Dharma. Then when we reflect on the second route and we come to the decision, that come to the understanding that my death could come at any time, the second decision we come to is that I must practice the Dharma from right now. And now with the third point, where we see that all that we put our time and energy into, in the end, will not help us. We come to recognize that I must come to the third decision, that I must practice only the Dharma. I must, or express it differently, I must apply myself only to the Dharma. That's the third decision, and that's where we came up to last night. The way the Lamrim is presented, this chapter and all the others, is it presents how the situation actually is, and it presents a multitude of reasons to establish that, as well as quotations to support those reasons. This is presented for a specific purpose, which is for us to meditate, to think about the topic in the way that is presented. If we merely repeat, I am going to die, the time of my death is uncertain, nothing but the Dharma will help at the end of my life, that way of thinking doesn't lead to, or that mere repetition rather, doesn't lead to a deep change of our way of thinking, a deep and stable, lasting change. That will only come through using reasons, where we come to gain conviction that it is definitely like this and not like that. When, to the extent we develop such a conviction, it becomes easy to let go of what we need to let go and to embrace what we need to embrace. This is how change becomes lasting and is not superficial. This is how change becomes a part of who you are. And then in your future rebirths, that way of thinking will accompany you because it's so deeply ingrained. But for that to happen requires this process of again and again thinking about these topics in the way that it's presented, in other words, with reasons. So we bring about a deep conviction. And with this change that will come through reflecting based on reasons, this is how the Dharma, which is being cultivated within, becomes one's protecting refuge. In that because this word refuge is a word for protection, this is how the Dharma protects you. It protects you from the deceit of one's own afflictions, or the deceitful behavior of one's own afflictions, who encourage us to act in a way that we are most comfortable with, a way that we're most habituated to. It also protects us from misleading friends who may mean well, but say to encourage us, I know you're a committed religious person, but let's go out and have fun tonight, and encourage us in these various ways. When the Dharma is truly risen within, based on reasons, it's easy not to be influenced by that. And a third illustration, which is the most important, is that in this and lifetimes to come, the Dharma will be able to protect one from being misled by charismatic spiritual teachers. Those who perhaps with good motivation encourage their students to act in certain ways and not act in other ways, but these are not in accordance with the Dharma. If one has developed the protecting refuge of the Dharma within, it will be very clear to you that what they're saying is not quite right. There's something off with what they are presenting, and that hesitation is how the Dharma protects you. And perhaps in this life, with misleading friends, or friends encouraging you to engage in the delights that you always did in the past, with ease, you'll be able to decline their invitation. You won't even be tempted. So this is why you need to meditate repeatedly over a sustained period using reasons, and do so, as we mentioned again last night, in formal meditation, and this is what one needs to be thinking about as one goes about one's day. This is how it becomes ingrained within oneself, and one changes at a deep level.
Samlodi ani pesujino kumgure setima soyede denmadi sungore. Dene ye kasi chuyans lamji shimbe begodes and podowe sung nes ngege nangse mitaba komba dirang inde dinyeje da yeje so cedi nawa kunsene rangjibu nisu mebars ne nisu mebe che parodo cheyi drawer shene cheminbe jiyang jarme nyamdo sedila machabashi ndegonsa.
That final segment the final segment of what I've just presented brings us to the third sub-outline within this chapter. So the first were the first three sentences on the actual reasons relating to this route. Then we looked at the conclusion, which is the decision to practice the Dharma. Now we come to the need to make effort in this life, as it is the foundation of the path. So Lama Tsongkhapa writes, although this decision arises only with great difficulty, try hard to develop it because it is the foundation of the path. So here we see Lama Tsongkhapa making this point I've just mentioned, that we need to meditate on this topic repeatedly and keep it in mind as well. In the words of Potoa, and we'll just change one word in the second sentence, for me, exclusion and appearance consists in this very meditation on impermanence, excluding all the appearances of this life, close relationships, possessions, and the like, and aware that I will go to another life alone without thinking, without anything. I think I must do nothing that is not Dharma, and non-attachment for this life begins to arise.
Dena sidu the Gangeshe Thubten Rabten Chiwa Neva, Namchi Neva Meba, Chiwi, Chematoshin, Pando Mebari, the Inzada Chi, Cetelia, and the Judigal Church, Neba, Chekudu, Simba Taji, Tajoba, Dine Himba in Asor, Dine Chekoba Ina, Thubten Dine Inzang, and Bezusine, and Yamlan Chekugu, or that Dinigin, Dena said.
So again, the first word in Tibetan is being excluded because it's not really necessary for our English, but it's a connecting word to what's come before because this is the start of a new sub-outline. And it's a word, therefore. So now we've come to this third outline, which is the need to make effort in this topic, as it is the foundation of the path. So this word, therefore, links to these three roots and their 9 reasons. Therefore, having reflected on that and come to the 3 decisions that I must practice the Dharma, I must do so from now and only the Dharma. This is what the therefore links back to.
Because Chiwangame, Namching, Chiwangaba, Namching, Chiwi, Chumatoba, Chukangi, Pandomeba, Don, that church, Jehu, some Tajuk, something German member, the Gia de Descalicaboyores, or that Gigassi Juniors, the Gigassi Junior, Descalicaboyores. Is that I Calico to Saint Shasha Yomares, Mezu, Bezus, and Yamna Chores, Carre Lamna, Lamji Shimbies, Denigi Samlodi, Yamlingi Rimbadi, Arzuge, that Lamji Shis, the Denia, Engagement, Tarbada, Tamji Kimbo, Gomotoig, Lam Chasan Yegi, she Zawal Masona Dires, she am Zawa, Zar Zawales, Dia was Majumbana, Shandadi Lam Yam Tumares, Jesnada, Denigi, Church in Yamne, Yamne chickens with touch with Samlo Dumba, Denisi Mebaina, did Chun Yamne Jegeta. Jamnijeta, Tarba, Tamji Kimbo, Govata, Kibu, Mundio Govan Toyega, Lam Yamlen Chege, Lam Yazawa, Shidmason, she said it, she am Zawa, Rashi did it. Then that Bezus in the Gongo, there's Gialia, there's Dusu Mambo Koreana, there's Kalia Chumba in Aya, Bezu, Zundu, Dinyamna, which you were yes, or to say Giagas Junior City, the Yamlen Chilica, Lamsa Gialic, the Nickel Lojuma might be Giatica Habures in a Dusenda Galek Shama Shabache, Bezu Jeje, and the Muduche, Dusin Yamne Jewores, Carres and D, Miapuch Majumba, Yamne Yapuch, Lam Janadi, Yamne Yapuchi, two Mardi, Yapuchumba, Yam Lam Yamne Janadi, Yapuchum, Ungres order.
Although this decision arises only with great difficulty, so here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying very clearly to us, to change deep-seated habitual patterns does not come about easily, because they are so deep-seated. Therefore, expect that you will need to try, and the text continues, try hard to develop it. Which here this makes, again, very clear that one needs to make a sustained effort. So we have it translated as try hard to. So the same word will often be translated as effort, or a word like that. When you come across this word, include the second meaning to effort, and that is continuous. It's never to be understood as being sporadic or occasional, but whenever you come across a word such as effort, include the second meaning to, because the word literally is effort, include the second meaning that it implies continuity, not occasional. So therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that one must try hard continuously, because this decision, and the decision is, I only must practice the Dharma, and therefore I need to let go of my pursuit of trivial pleasures. I need to let go of my worries and concerns, which are about things which are insignificant, because these pleasures and problems are tied just to this life. And Lama Tsongkhapa continues, because it is the foundation of the path. So this word foundation or basis can also, another word can be used, that being the root. So this topic, the death and impermanence, which leads to the three decisions, in particular the final decision, to let go of everything of no value and only apply myself to what has value, that is the root, the foundation, the basis of the entire path. And path refers to mental paths. And these mental paths are the mental paths that lead to the final goals of liberation or enlightenment. So the mental paths that one may aspire to generate, definite emergence, bodhicitta, the wisdom realizing emptiness. If you have at least a wish to become a bodhisattva or to realize emptiness, understand that the foundation for that realization is this topic, and in particular, this abiding decision within to only apply oneself to the Dharma. So therefore, we need to make effort in this continuously, because it is difficult to achieve.
저게 삼로디기디네 녀만의 곰심해 봐서도 곰시 싸워서 와서데 남산 삼로 주와 땅에 빼갈래 하보러 와지는데 야네 삼다제 고 주와 땅 두고 땅고로 제가 되니게 치와 저게 소소게 치와 삼다 치왕 내가 치고 치야리 세베 남쟁이 매래 치외진 최마도 강이제 판도요 말대자다 두시네 최 Bendigo 최 냠는 지기 선배 타죠 삼도스네 삼노다 되네 아주기 되네게 삼다야다 되네게 삼다네 다 되네게 냠는데 야고 영향이 된다라야 라마다 이담려야 근데 지기 최고부 소와대바 안 최고부 알아서 봐다 되네게 줘봐 되네지네 안 몰람자야 알아서 봐 되네게 토안에 소사 집장 님도 소사 집장 님도 지기 되네 공부이나 그냥 저기 돼 다디 게리아 아니 이제 판도 연구로 되네자다 저기 대리아 되네 공부 야냐 제베네 소사 집자면야데 되스갈래 하고 제가 되네 좀 되네 공부 대리아 지 남아데 이담려 지 최고부야도 소지 야 아니 몰람자 뒤시네 아니 지게 소사 집자지 고고래서 되네게 제베네 당 저기 제산 배주지 두시네 배주제베네 되네 냠네데 야고용 도고래서 순고로다 제갈래 가보 영야이데 제갈래 가보 인바데다 되스 니 제게 둠데레라 줘야려야 다빈 튕기는 망고 참고 인자 내려 지게 라마다 이담려 아니 지게 저기 자다 쳐보고 몰람 가서래 소딥지 되네 아니 지 몰람 잡도시네 계셔 사상으로 님도 지지지네 도신지 오래서 뭐라
As you know from your own lived experience, when you have come to recognize that a particular habitual pattern is harmful and you want to be rid of it, you know the way to be rid of it is to try and develop the opposing habitual pattern. Moreover, you know how difficult that is. when one is deeply inclined to think in a certain way or act in a certain way, it's difficult to restrain oneself. And it's very difficult to completely eradicate this habitual response. So this process of cultivating the Dharma is slow and comes about only in dependence on continuous effort. This is the case with this topic and every topic of the Dharma. So the advice that is given to aid one in one's meditation is not only that the meditation and reflection out of informal reflection should be done continuously, not only that, but one needs to turn to one's Lama and Yidam and make supplications and prayers. Having done so, then engage in the process of accumulating merit and purifying non-virtue. This was presented in a previous chapter on how to meditate. This is advice to take to heart and to start your meditation session with this, with making prayers and supplications to one's Lama and to one's Yidam, and to engage in a process of accumulation and purification. This aids your then subsequent meditation session to be more successful. Because what one is really doing with this process of supplication, accumulation, and purification is one is accumulating additional and required causes and conditions that will enable one's meditation to more quickly bring about a change to one's habitual ways of thinking. So this is the purpose of engaging in this preliminary to the meditation. And that preliminary to the meditation is that of making prayers or supplications, making offerings and so forth, and purifying and so forth. Engaging in these ways helps the meditation to, over time, bear the desired fruit.
Kiala, ne tunji mangura sangura, Benara Zugida, Jiki Zairo Chine, Jiki Bene Tunyaru Chachipura, some Tamine, they Tunyagi Rayala, Tambo Tunji Mango Sangura, Jello Maru, the Shuru, the Japedido, the Dinia, Karlua, the Mangos Gurua, Dini, usually they get some by that, they and the Swagi. Choose Sobosoyada, and they just choose Sobosoga, and then me legally. Just not do some done. Japo Gang Duya, Yagaro Twinget of Manguchi Changje, Duya, Madam, Masana, Jatuya Regomara, Twinjanda Sana Manager Zemerwa, then Chinch sound and Jazu Mimena Amerwa. Nancy Chazan town and Chuchibu Sam and Merwa, Table to Kumara. Chazan Twinge Chazan Sangura, Twinge Chazan Sansona, then Jew to Yongova. Benna to give Sabondoji, called Jibumiegi, Yuki, Twinge Chazan Samana, Delia Sing Lomachi Koma Gasha Vena, Uzu to Surdua Paki, Twinge and Samarwa. Some men got best of Gazi and Ki to Merwa. Chesa Twinge Chazan Samba, Chesa Denis and Dinig Yamlin Chibicabia, Jige, Ya Lama, 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 Ya Sodip Chiata, and the Deva Chiata, Chupuata, and Susuki Deepa Shire, Dinig some Dijane, and the Hangom Jap to Shivet, Twingichesa, Sambina, then Yamlin you talk about the keep it, Yapuch Gora get to it. Then Twingero Yapumasa, Chojina, Jita, Gomra, Jap, Jian, Sosa, Jana, can measure them. And this again get to a Hoboya, Chagorwa. Tine is that Twingichesa Sango for it. Dini is that Twingin Sabina, Ganga Mary, that so Twingin Masawati, Ganga Tigor water.
In general, it can be said that our approach to the topic of cause and effect or dependence arising is very superficial. We understand that to have a specific result, some causes are required. Would express it differently. In dependence on an accumulation of causes, the desired results will come. This you all will accept. But when we think about a desired result and the required causes, we think in a very superficial manner. It does not readily appear to our mind, because we haven't yet realized those topics, just how extensive the interlinked web of required causes and conditions are to bring about even a simple result. So to give an example, when I make tea every day, making tea every day, which I make chai tea, which I make in a pot on the stove. I know this process very well. I've been doing it for my entire life. And so I can engage in it very easily. But if I think about the various steps that are required, in other words, all the causes that need to be accumulated merely to make a morning cup of tea, it's extensive. Firstly, there needs to have been planning done beforehand so that the required ingredients are all present in the kitchen. If that prior planning wasn't done, I'm not going to have any tea. And then when it comes to making the tea itself, I need to first boil some water. Then I need to go to where the tea leaves are kept and add the right amount. Then once it's boiled sufficiently, I go to the fridge. I take the right amount of milk and I add that to the pot. All of that is required. And I also have to be mindful of the process of boiling now that the milk is added, because as you know, if you've made chai tea, the milk rises in the pot and can very easily overflow. So at one point, I need to drop the heat. So I need to be aware of that. But then, this is all quite obvious, nothing surprising here. But when you think then about the unseen conditions and causes that were required for this simple process, the scientific research into what are the required metals to make a pot, to make a stove, to have gas coming into the house. There was a lot of research into that, and then workers developing skill over decades to be able to build these various components. Even for the porcelain cup I will pour my tea into. At some point, someone looked at the various materials required to make porcelain, how to glaze it, and so forth. And this entire manufacturing process and transportation process and business process of selling and buying, all of this is involved. Now, these causes are dispersed. They are not readily available, readily apparent. But if any of them are missing, I will not be able to make my cup of tea. So from this very simple example, what I want you to take away from is that for your meditation to be successful, there are a lot of causes and conditions that are required, not merely sitting and going through the points of the meditation. That is essential, but that alone is insufficient. You have to also go through those points of meditation, or at least keep the decisions in mind as one goes about one's day. And one needs to accumulate and purify. Therefore, one starts the session with making supplications, calling to mind, feeling the presence of one's Lama and one's Yidam, and then as if in their physical presence, one makes offerings, one purifies, and so forth. Because this expansive net of required causes and conditions is required for everything. If it's required for a mere cup of tea, these certainly are required to change deep-seated habitual patterns.
Adine, Geshe Podawi Garsungores and the Podawi Sunies, Nyegi Nasa Mitawa Kumba Tira is this. Jizada, Jigorus Masona, and then Nawa, Jike, Nawa, Jukweva de Carre, se, Sewa said the Nans, Dine. Nichipa Gakova de Care says Chipa Jivaji Gaujugi Namshatima Shuve that the me Chikansile Cetelia Sosugi Nyamlin Lichache and Delia Chidanga to Gakwa but the Jukwa Mongoro. She's at the Nansi City Gawad Jubi Namsha City that Delia Chishipoto Sosu Nyamlin Lichache. Now I said Azulia that. 저 가르는 것은 체디나 잠게 체디잠게 나와 나네다 튀게다디 약보도 섬 델레 시행제 안디 베디나 두비하게 삼는 찍가지고 두숑 거로 와 지자다 체디난기 자와 잠라 차제 델야 안질야가로 고콜 되게 아주 취념지 바도바디 디용 거레스 나와세 다 세시다 다 제산 디 나와 디 파가지네 세디 점기 자와레 시엔제 안지가 저게 내가 자와디 파델레 도르제 안에 직다 남친에메레다 그치면 치용에 남친에메레 제산 기치용 치워 최마도 신이 강이야 판도 매바래 제 세디남지 자와 짱짱 제대로는 제와 치말라 디기 판도 말에 제자데 디바가제 되네 바 개와 치미기 되냐기 되냐 삼바게지 개와 치미 된다리야 개주 죽고 봐대 디라레스 곰고에 디레스 와도 곰고 봐대 디레스 나 senang nangwa 죽고 봐 디레스 다 곰고 봐 디레스 세와 까고 봐대 세디남이 디점게 자와래 신제 아니 지금 자와 짱짱 죽되제 개와 치미기 된다 삼마다 봐 되네 자와 죽게 까고 디레스 제상한테 두시네 가고래 나세 미다바 제자 미다바 곰제 두시네 가고래 디라레스 당한테 제치쇼디 디레스 조디 나세 미다바 곰바 디라인데스
Now let's turn to this quotation from Potawa. So, for me, exclusion and appearance consists in this very meditation on impermanence. So this is in a greater context where someone asked him a question. So a person very learned in the Dharma then asked Potawa to ascertain whether Potawa was an educated practitioner or was he uneducated or uneducated. So it's a question that is about positive and negative phenomena. So this is clearly a philosophical question. But Potawa, recognizing the arrogance behind the person who was asking this question, this person who wasn't merely trying to ascertain whether Potawa was knowledgeable or not, but wanting to present himself as superior, Potawa decided to rather challenge this person's pride by answering from his own meditation experience. Because for meditation to arise, it comes about independence on a prior cultivation of knowledge. So instead of answering about positive and negative phenomena, Potawa replied talking about appearance and exclusion. And he spoke about appearance and exclusion, not at all in a philosophical way, but in a way in terms of his meditation on this topic of the impermanence of life. So again, this first sentence, for me, exclusion and appearance consists in this very meditation on impermanence. And as he will go on to say, what appears to one's mind, this does not exist in the way that it appears. Therefore, I analyze how things exist and I exclude what has no real value. And I rather strive to accumulate or to apply myself to what has real value. And then as he will say it more explicitly than that, all those appearances that are related to this brief life, all those appearances that relate to this brief life, which really, over the great expanse of my existence, this life is nothing more than a flash of lightning in terms of its duration. It passes so quickly like a steep mountain waterfall. I let those appearances go. I exclude those appearances, and I rather focus on accumulating the causes that will lead to a meaningful outcome. Rather than striving to accumulate the causes for pleasures, which will pass in a moment, I strive to accumulate the causes that will lead to the attainment of enlightenment. And rather striving to overcome the problems which lead to a momentary discomfort, I strive to eradicate or to dispel or exclude that which will keep me bound in suffering. So this is how Potawa responds to this philosopher.
가바던 주바세디 지나다 직디다 저기 된다 첨보래 주야당 아니 된다 청쇼래 삼다야를 몽부여로 배는 저기 지진비게 자활라 삼다바이나 나서 죽고야데 가르스는 아주 튕긴이 좋아 먼저 튕긴이 아주 죽고 걸어와 세고야데 가고야 가르스는 튕긴이라 바시 깽엔 바시 디파 가고 걸어와 지나데 주바다 세와세야 지네 지상아주 디기 고어제 디기 영향이 교 튕긴이 죽고야 되네 네 직디 된다래야 튕긴 가르가 두로당 지사야 또 역할인데 디 죽고야로 지사다 강아 세야야 그 영향이 강아 책이 바시에 가르는 디메바 속으로와 지사 세고야 돼 제나와 주바세 되네 레자야 이게 자는 디메비게다 먼저 디레 지게 양치게 파 안에 따와를 파차와는 아주 가호에 바디 가르스는 랑신 비트 주비 동 랑신 주버고 가자고로 파 가호바 세고바 가호바지 주고바스는 디도서 랑신 주비 동비 동반이디 소수기 셈려 체명해봐 주고 주바스 또 봐서 디 주고바 차고로 제산 가자를 파자 가주기세 가바 가자 랑신 주바디 가샤로와 디 세고 가고로 소수게 셈려 나와디 나와나시 요마레스메 고 나와라 가고 나와라 가 진짜 랑신 주비 동비 동반디 랑게 셈려 어디 녀바 주고로와 진짜 가주게 디스투스네 고 가자라 투스네 제 가바세 진짜 가샤를 가야다 나 주바세디 디 동배 동이디 주 체면해봐 주바세 체면해봐 녀야를 양자야 되고 다들 저 소야디 안능아 저거 가고 받에 가서는 체 디나미기 자월의 현재 될래 차라게 자와 제바디다 쉐지벌 바시리 디가고레스 루고바데 가르스는 다 겨치마 원dio 고반 토비 칠도 안지게 아니 디기 주야 된다라 겨 주고바데 디레서 제자디 주고데 미다와섬 도두시네 미다베고 되네 다 겨치마라야 안지게 쉐지마제는 다 민우선비게 삼로디 디 냠는 제고 주고바 디레서 다디 디숨거와
So we have, in Poto's answer, he uses these two words, exclusion and appearance. So this is in reply to your question that didn't use the words exclusion and appearance, but rather instead of exclusion, use the word negative phenomena and appearance positive phenomena. So how he's answering though is to show that we can relate to this topic that was asked on this philosophical topic of positive and negative phenomena on a superficial level or at a profound level. So he shows that you can relate to positive and negative phenomena on the superficial or profound level, but he uses the words exclusion and appearance. Sorry. So, in his reply, he replies and says, what ordinary people need, or worldly people need, what they need, what's positive for them, what they need, are, we have the word possessions, but more literally the Tibetan here is not possessions, but necessities. People need necessities, things that are essential for their existence. So it's a bit more specific than possession. So it's the possessions one actually requires. This is what people really need, ordinary people. And what they need to exclude, so this is the play on negative phenomena, are the obstacles to whatever is present as an obstacle to their acquiring of the necessities of life. So this is the way ordinary people relate to positive and negative phenomena, or to what is required, what is essential, and what hinders that. But for those who are looking beyond the appearances of this, or beyond the pleasures and problems of this life, for them, what is a positive and a negative phenomenon are very different. So for them, what is an appearance and and to be excluded is very different. So for someone who is looking beyond the trivialities of this life. For them, what is to be excluded is everything that is contrary to reality, and what is to be engaged with, what is to be cultivated, is what is in accordance with reality. So a genuine Dharma practitioner takes every appearance that comes to their mind and asks themselves, yeah, further conditions to be able to talk. So an actual practitioner, a practitioner not merely in name, but an actual practitioner, will be mindful of their mind continuously and take everything that appears to one's mind, so everything one thinks about, and ask the question, does it exist in the way that it appears or not? In this way, they come to embrace reality through recognizing that no phenomenon exists in the way that it appears. So what needs to be excluded here is true existence. And what needs to be embraced is the wisdom realizing reality. This is what a genuine practitioner focuses on. In addition to that, in addition to letting go of true existence and embracing the wisdom realizing reality, a genuine practitioner will embrace also the associated conventional good qualities that are required so as to achieve meaningful goals. Associated conventional good qualities such as bodhicitta. So this is what the practitioner will strive to accumulate, and what they will strive to eliminate or exclude or dispel will be the afflictions. This too is how a genuine practitioner relates to this topic. What appears, to investigate whether it exists in this way or not, and exclude the true existence, recognizing nothing exists in the way that it appears, and rather embrace the wisdom realizing emptiness. Also, they will embrace conventional good qualities such as bodhicitta and let go of everything else that hinders that, in particular, the afflictions.
다들 뒤에 손에 대제상 맞아 체티 점에 나와디 체티를 신비게 신차되게 봐가 되네 봐세 되네 치교 치마 치원 치마되니 이렇게 삼바디 봐 규례게 주비에디 송구도와 되네자 두고 디라이스 답변에 임비 금전들라 예제다 예시에서 체티 나와 군세네에서 제가 양아 저게 체딜량아서 삼로데 카라요스네 다 소수게 니도 소수게 예지게 된다 다직 디된다 장양 삼다싱아 저게 다 딜레 자체와 주요 말에서 비게 치쇼 딜레 삼다싱아 저 디된다 장야 레가 제디고와 제산디 다 디제디 체디점로마도 팽 말에 디점이마도 안디안 체디점게 강아 차상세 두고 말와 제산디 다다 체고 말 제산디 나와다디 파 도르치 파샤제네 파세디 디레스 오다 예제다 예제라서 체디 나와 나비게 체디나 잠기 자와라 체디 잠기 자와라 파 슈제 아니 직디도나 레갈레제 최냠는 삼마화 디냐냐 제되바디 다디 내가 호에 디레스 오다 어디
The Potawai continues. So here I've just changed the first word so that it matches exclusion and appearance. Excluding all the appearances of this life. So the meaning is dispelling, but it should rather match before. Excluding all the appearances of this life. So this is how an actual practitioner will relate to their mind they will investigate whatever appears to their mind and see, does it exist in accordance with reality or not? That's one way of doing it. One way that a practitioner will engage with what appears to their mind. Another way will be taking what appears to one's mind as, for example, a necessity, and ask themselves, is it as such or not? Or to express it slightly differently, the meditator will look at what appears to their mind and ask themselves, do I really need to engage with that or not? Does it have significance, which is how it appears to me, or not? So the meditator will also take not just look at from the perspective of reality, what appears to their mind, but also ask themselves from a conventional perspective, is this something I am required to put time and energy into or not? In that sense, is it a necessity or not? So from then thinking, relating to what appears in their mind from this conventional aspect, the meditator is able to exclude all those things that are associated with this life's pleasures and problems, and rather solely embrace what goes beyond this life. So in other words, if something is genuinely a necessity, that would be engaged in with the understanding that it will aid one's spiritual development. And what is not will be let go of. So this is how a meditator will relate to the appearances on their mind, the appearances to their mind, and will be able to let go of what is not a necessity and what is just a mere appearance of this life, or something that appears as being necessary for this life when in fact it isn't. And rather embrace the actual necessities for this life and what will be of benefit in lives to come. This is how a Dharma practitioner is able to engage solely in the Dharma.
The now gas said the citizen and the year the usual chane, sitting in Jawalia, on Shinchachi, the passe tiris, that Druidi, Rani Jibu Nisu Mebe, Tse Parodo, and Chi draw a shene, Chimin by Jiang, Jerme, Yam somebody. Jezada, Rani, and Shidu Gabla, Rani Jibu. Droere mato deji niba ni nido la so bada ju yuje la so kan ke meba ni su meba side ni la na robot chwe de ni ro da jiza kan ni su meba side kan ke meba je ane shi zhuo wo shi wo jiza paro du ge wa qima zhuo wo res paro du qi yu zhuo wa se mu tu xie da ge ji ne ge paro du zhuo du xin zhuo ba de xie du 근데 델레야 네가 소 최마인 바샤 관계에 판도 매바지 하고도 다 최제반의 판도 여바지 하고가 제되네 제 최민바 지경 자매 냠도 자 최마도 신 가야 제 민도 판도 민도 제사 최지부 그 판도고도 제사다 최냠는데 제고도 선배게 삼로디 두벼디 디레 소원에 자매 세대 지견 잘매 최매바 최제는 마도 신 관계에 판도 매바 민도 시고를 잘매세 지견 잘매 세들이 냠도 세들라 마차와 용어 세드 제일 시야지 라니 지부 니수 매바라 세 파로도 치기 조를 시내 최민바 지견 잘매 잘매서 최념는 제마도 생 가야 제 미도 제사다 님이 최념는 제 고도 세야 돼 대신에 저 최념는 제 봐 타줘 봐서 저거를 근데 무슨 거래 지와
So through excluding all the appearances of this life, the meditator is able to let go of what doesn't truly hold value. Potawai continues, close relationships, necessities, and the like. So this then is relating to the point we've just looked at, the third route, which is even at the time of our death, our loved ones, our dear friends, even our spiritual teacher, cannot help us at that time. They cannot prevent our death. We will continue, and we'll leave them behind. So too with our necessities or possessions. And all that will accompany me is my karmic imprints. So the only impact my loved ones will have on me as I move to my next life is the imprints, virtuous and non-virtuous, I accumulated in relation to them. Likewise, the only impact my possessions will have as I move into my next life is the karmic imprints I accumulated, both virtuous and non-virtuous, in relation to them. And Poterai continues, and aware that I will go to another life alone without anything. So everything material is left behind. Solely the imprints are what will accompany me. Now, Poterai continues, I think I must do nothing that is not Dharma. And this then is the third decision that the meditator comes to. With each route there's a decision. The first was, I must practice the Dharma. The second is, I must practice the Dharma from right now. And the third, I must do nothing other than the Dharma. I must do nothing that is not Dharma. So in other words, I must ensure that I accumulate only virtuous imprints, purify non-virtuous imprints. And in my endeavors to accumulate virtue, this needs to be focused on lives beyond this, and in particular on the attainment of the great goals of liberation and enlightenment.
Dene zada dene komyodi nyamdo sore jarme nyamdo setila machaba shi deong sido dene tu samdang komyodi dene dadeng hanzu setila chashen chimbu jorwa jesan di doje setila ya chashen meba machaba di chik yongure sore dene ge setila chashen meba den jewa chima chime dondala ane jawa 냠네 제 조어제 용거래 소 세딜라 마차바게 세디난 점 예자와라 마차바시 게메 게와 치마 되니 조 니던달이야 냠네 제 용거래 소래 삼로디 리투그래 소르디네 공바이나.
Poterai continues, and I've also changed this line a bit. And non-attachment for this life begins to arise. And non-attachment for this life begins to arise. This clause shows how this meditation on the impermanence of life, or death and impermanence, is the very foundation of the path. So this meditation topic is the foundation for the path, because it's through letting go of this life one is able to focus on lives beyond this, and in particular, focus on the goals of liberation and enlightenment. And those mental paths, definite emergence, bodhicitta, the wisdom realizing emptiness, come about in dependence on the cultivation of this realization, because it gives us the focus and strength of mind to be able to let go of what's unimportant.
Dilola Mageba Che Tamje Lam Gane Duba in Sunsa.
Poterai concludes with, until this attitude arises in one's mind, the paths to all the Dharma remain blocked.
Jasan Dilola Mageba and the Disia that in Yellow Shade, Jasan Setina Zambi Nawa de Pa Gaje, that Gawa Chima to Hage, Chikiwi Chima, the Chema, the Chirical Chema, the Gangi Japanto Midu, Sambi, Samloji, Yabu Mageba, Dine, Anzuge, and Denige Yabu Mageba, Dine, Che Tamji Lam Gane, Sidija, Che Yamlin Jega, Chasan Gadi Horus, Zangawa Chima Dunyagi, Dundal Duyag, Yamlanjia, Tarvata Tamji Kimbi Duya, Lam Yamne Chaza, Digi Pa Gajin, Dinish Lasha, Chazan Di, Yam Inji Miji. Dentige samlodi about to give away the shahs or the Yabu give away in the nature Yamna Jega, Lamnatike, Jigabu Yon 2 days more.
Until this attitude. So this refers to the outcome of this entire meditation, which is that one abandons the concerns of this life. One is no longer drawn to this life's pleasures or repelled by this life's problems, they are seen as insignificant and of no real importance. Someone who has abandoned the concerns of this life is not swayed by the events of this world, because they are seen as transitory, as expressions, of course, in effect, expressions of dependence arising, and therefore they are passing. What's important is the many lives to come. What's important is liberation from suffering. This then leads to definite emergence, and to be able to help others attain the same state that you desire, bodhicitta, and to bring them both about, the wisdom realizing emptiness. Those are the mental paths that become accessible through giving rise to this attitude in one's mind. Then one is able to cultivate the paths of the Dharma.
Anda Geshe Thubten Shene Kyang Sa Shella Tsongkhapa dan Tibetan Ladang Lama la so depsing. And Rüxing dang Jene Nendenge Samna Lo Jayang Miki Nyamba Shikyang Dushe Sona Midebe Jijik Dala Gewa Yin Sung Sa.
Lama Tsongkhapa quotes from Dulpa. If incidentally you accumulate the collections and purify the obstructions, make request to the deities and your guru, and contemplate insistently with perseverance. But then even that which you think will not come about for 100 years will come about effortlessly, for conditioned things do not remain static.
Andelia Karsne Shalla Tsongkhapa dan Tibetan Ladang Lama la so deba saji. Dushu Sungdua, Jizan Di Inzan, Dadi, Jidang, Lam Yamne Gar Janju Sim, Yamne Chavina, Janju Sim, Yamne Gulea Wiki, Dondala, and then as Lada Lamalos, Ben Sosa Tipja, and then Lada Lamala Soa Debadi, Yamne Garishina Dusin Gugurwa, that the Captir Karasunga, Karela Sungan Sungura Sene, that then Kiwa Chime. 가서 치버랑에 봐 남지에 치베 저 쉐마도 바강이 개판도 매와서 다 최진염된 제고도 선배 계획 치마 되는 삼바다지 쉐념는 저 둔바디 삼바도 야고치 개발라 아니 야 안지 디게와 된다라 아니 디냠는 저 샤라 아니 디냠는 제 덴파라파라 동바디와 지갑을 야샤야 아니 초사 집자지 우리에서 초사시다 다다라말에 최고부야 아니 자세라서 봐다 되는 소득시야 Tibetan said that Deniki Mazuki Divashai Yamada, Deniki Divashai Donalia Chasevala Sovana, Deni Yigiala So Dumba Karachim and Dushin Sosa Tijanchia. Tiza Lada Lamala Soa Tips, the Lada Lamalia Soa de Lami, Dusha Soa Tip de Jewore Essage, Dusine.
If incidentally you accumulate the collections and purify the obstructions, make requests to the deities and your guru. So this advice of making requests to one's Lama and Yidam, this one hears in many contexts in the Dharma. And it's important to engage in such, whatever one is meditating on. So if you've heard about this in, say, the context of bodhicitta, where you make supplications and prayers for support in the cultivation of bodhicitta, please know this is how we approach every meditation topic. Every meditation topic needs to engage, we need to engage in the preliminary to that meditation, which is the accumulation and purification, as well as supplication and prayer to one's Lama and Yidam. So to be specific then to this context of definite emergence, if you start each meditation by calling to mind one's Lama, one's Yidam, feeling their presence, and then express prayer to them or supplicate them for their inspiration for you to be able to let go of what's unimportant, to no longer follow the appearances to the mind, placing a value on them beyond what they exist. Make prayer to rather keep one's mind focused on the Dharma and no longer be swayed by the comings and going in your life, in society, in the world and so forth, but be focused on what really has meaning. So you start with supplication, and then you accumulate merit through making offerings, making prostrations, and you can engage in some purification, all in relation so that one can continue in this process of meditation and gain transformation of one's mind.
디네게 리싱 다 제네스 리싱스 닝 돕서 닝르시 디네게 전주시 닝주시 뉴바데 템바 다 도시네 냠네 쳐고레스 닝르다 제네 낸덴기스데 베주이 제시 안지 차르직 제니제 많이 바시 안지 무디시 도시네 닝르다 제바 베셈 닝르데 제바스 다팅아 냠네 제오즈 전주로 차고도 와 전주 베지 가랑라 디네 베지 디 냠네 제알레 돈예기 듬바 베마세 가랑라 시우치여바 닝르사 제바 제네 디아 낸덴 베주이 제제네 네시 무디시 낸덴제 차르직 니 멤버제 무디시 제고레 도시 낸덴예 삼네 베 게침부 시우레 다디 마젠네 베사게 디 게침부 시우레 산네 낸덴 바 게침부 삼다제 나 전주다제 베주제네 안데 도시 냠네 제고레서 리신다 제네 낸덴예 삼나스 도시 냠네 제고레서.
And Dorje concludes the sentence with, and contemplate insistently with perseverance. So this too is advice for your meditation on this topic and every single topic. So to talk a little bit about these words, insistence and perseverance, the translation is fine. But the word translated as perseverance, the literal meaning is, maybe in English we'd say something like, from your bones. So if you feel something deep in your bones, because the Tibetan literally is the word for bones. So we have an expression like this in Tibetan. So this, and it's correctly translated as perseverance. So this gives a good feeling for what could be expressed with a different word, that of being heartfelt, that this is something really from deep within you, something that you could say perhaps defines who you are. This is how we should be approaching meditation, with this level of sincerity, of perseverance. And the other word, insistently, it's correct translation, it's another word for what is an alternative for effort. So again, insistent shows a mind that is focused on the topic, but it is also a mind that isn't sporadic. If you are insistent on something, you are not sporadic. You're not just trying to get your way now and again. You are really applying yourself. This is required for meditation. With a mind that is gentle, but a mind that is continuous. One insistently perseveres in this process of transforming our way of thinking, of developing new habitual ways to think. This is how to approach meditation.
자상한수 라발라 루고드면에 샬렙렙스네 슈교마르와 가르 갸투마라고 렙렙 차로라 구루라 제가 루고시베네 루고여바서 디기 지 슈교여바서 갸투야나 가르치투고르와 이난신 셈레야 뉴슈 딩냠네 제호도 셈베 뉴버 되니리 듬버 전주 슈침보지 매바나 냠네 제투 말에서라 다 제가 되니기 냠네 셈레야 냠네 제두기 듬바 되니 슈침보지 고리에서 와다 리신세 되니 여바이나 아나 로자르 야 미게 냠바 시경 소다 다오다 등아서 오다 데데데 냠네 깔려 카고레다 로자르 겁나 기투고 말해서 배 삼로치 데니시 기투 말해서 뭐 여나양 배주의제 준주의 제제 냠네 제바이나 아니 기투 그래서 오다.
So this word translated as perseverance, that I said in English we can relate to from our expression, like from your bones. And Genla was saying, so the Tibetan way of relating to this expression is if one's arm had no bone, one's flesh would just flop limp and would be quite useless. So in relation to our topic here of meditation, we understand that we need to develop a deep inner strength of mind. So that would be like the bones which support, or the skeleton that supports the body. The strength, this would refer to a perseverance being a deep inner strength in the mind in relation to the meditation topic, which is accompanied by a consistent approach, or insistently it says. So these 2 points is how we should be relating to our meditation. And then Dorje continues. Then even what you think will not come about for 100 years. So this is important, because it's all too easy for a laziness of feeling this is too difficult for me to arise in the mind. So this mind that gives up. Especially if you've tried, and you've tried, and you've tried, but the same old habit patterns keep appearing. It's all too easy to give up. Or perhaps to accept an appearance to the mind that says, not today, I'll delay. The laziness of procrastination. So these 2 can arise very easily because it is difficult to change deep-seated habitual patterns. And our habitual patterns have been developed over countless lifetimes. But what Dorje is saying here, don't give up. By being persistent and insistent, even that which you think will not come about for 100 years will eventually come about.
제상하면서 삼날이야 어다데 냠는제데 깔레 하고래 다시 우징이디 줍툭 말했으면 삼로 쉬운거래데 이내 다소속의 배주의 제제도 시는 인류이제 공부인다 줍툭을 해서 인비 김자 가르스는 뒤지에 소나 미네베 미데베스 지지에 따라 깨와 인송 제 뒤지에 소나 미네베스에도 제산 뒤지에 세딩 오버세도 교화 매바 자와기는 교화로야 매바지 되지 요 말에 되고 말했어 진짜 인지 태는 거 교화로 거랬어 진짜 소나 미네바스도 교화로 말도 소나 네발라는 교화기니 드라이 매바 되와들라 근데 교화기니 드라이 매나 아니 곰 까레 가지고 교화로 매나 깔레 가로 와대 제와요 제산데 뒤지에서도 교화로야 매바 말에 교화로야 요랬어 제산다 당하는 심나리야다 제투사 말에 제걸 깔레 하고 싶어 통과를 솔직히 배주의 제념는 제반 아주 되니기 끼기 아주 삼로도 교화친제 냠내 약고 용투를 해서 뒤져 소나 미래배 지직 따라 깨와 인수 제상 지직 따라 세도 아주 냠는 제바 나신 디미유디 심제 냠는 제바 나신 다가라지 된다 죽게 두고를 해서 지직 따라 깨와 인수 제상 소속의 뒤지에서 소속의 다대지 라마 제 소사 tip자제 라마 이담나 소와텝 아니 소속의 배주 제제 되니게 냠는 저 공부 있나 아니 아주 삼로도 교화친제 아니 교화줘야 매번 말이 되는 냠는 전에 삼로 교화주그래 교화줘네 소속의 미유 디냠는 똑바디 깨게 된다라 미유 냠는 제바 나신지 똑바디 규례 깨투그래 해서 깨봐 송소
I encourage you to take this to heart. Not to be deceived by the laziness that thinks, this is too much. I cannot do this. Change cannot come. Because it is not the case. This is a mistaken way to think. It's completely deluded. It is not the case. Because as Dorje says at the end, for conditioned things do not remain static. So our mind is conditioned. It has come about independence on causes. Each particular thought, each habituation has come about independence on conditions, on causes. Therefore, it will pass. This is the case with everything. We know this from the material world. We can experience it in our mind, but it is the case with habit patterns. When a habitual way of thinking meets its ripening causes, it immediately arises, and it arises with strength. And this is experienced as, I must do this. It feels good to do this. It feels comfortable, safe to do it because of our habituation. So recognize this, understand this. And also then understand that the stronger and more numerous the causes that have led to this habituation, the greater the perseverance and insistence is required. So therefore, when these habit patterns keep appearing, don't lose heart. Just keep applying the antidotes, and when you respond in an unskillful way, get over it and continue. The next day you try again, because conditioned things do not remain static. And then moreover, as Dorje says before that even things which you think will not come about for 100 years will come about effortlessly. Take this to heart too, because when you do achieve something which before had seemed impossible, when you look back, you can say that required a lot of effort. But when you look at it over the great expanse of lifetimes before now, and you see just how deep that habituation had gone, just how strong and numerous the causes were to that habituation, you recognize comparatively, I broke that habituation effortlessly. And I did so through the way described. And this is important. Making prayers and supplications to one's Lama and Yidam, engaging in accumulation and purification, and then engaging in the meditation based on reasons as presented throughout the chapter. And doing so formally and keeping those decisions in mind and influencing you throughout your day. This is how great change will come about in a way that appears to have been effortless.
Kama bige songne kar son baresne kama bala mi bo bo shuba na ngama kor ngama kyong kes chane shuza na ye za cho ye ma thwe ba shi song ba song so sa.
Lama Tsongkhapa continues, but just before I read from the text, to correct myself, I previously mentioned that this written as Karmapa is a mistake. It should be Karmawa, because that's what's written. Genla then explained that actually it is pronounced Karmapa, although it's written Karmawa. So take it, the text isn't mistaken here. So it's pronounced as it's written, Karmapa. When someone asked Karmapa about moving on to another topic, he said, repeat the previous one. When asked about the remaining ones, he said, there is nothing beyond it.
Dinik narosh mi pa community bes the narosh yes tushin shu sara shu de ne lama kama pe kar son bare sene mi pa po shu ba na de po shu de ngama gyor ke se de ngama da garang kom sho os ya da garang kom sho son bare se.
The student whom the Karmapa had been guiding through the meditation topics of the Lamrim had been meditating on impermanence. And the student felt, well, I've put the time and energy in, now it's time for a new meditation topic. So he requested a new meditation topic from the Karmapa, and this was the reply he got, that repeat the previous one, in other words, remain on impermanence. And when the student misapplied insistence and asked, well, what about the remaining topics? The reply that the student received, there is nothing beyond it. In other words, continue on this topic, integrate it deeper within you because of the great benefit that this topic leads to.
Nyema komyadi ko timbura yakura chung me nyura da yabo ma chung za khora tyos komyo de o shin de oda shin so dam samje da mi ba shanda bo gore sambai na ko timbu chung me banza ani ya ja da garan ya ja kom sho song ro da ngama kyong se de ngama gyorke se de ya ja da garan kom sho se da ko timbu chae don da.
So this is an illustration of why a student needs to rely on a teacher. Because this student had been meditating for a while on this topic, and they had gained a deep understanding and a transformation of their mind. So they were ready now to move on, or so they thought. But their teacher recognized that whilst this person had been meditating with perseverance and insistently, and had been meditating well, the transformation that had arisen wasn't yet lasting. Therefore, the student, whilst had thought they had attained realization, they actually had not yet. And therefore, their teacher said, continue on this topic longer.
Di Nanzulia, Yansi Ligore, Yungora, that Dush, or dashing for some jet, that dishing sauce, or that Shanda Chiwa Sembe, some Dimbu Medicabla, Dimbu Mining ever money, Dushing or Dangashing for some being a year, Geche, and that Shanda Chiwa Sembe, some of the Yansi Yungore, the Dimbu Mechade, and Denigi, Dishaji, Shanda Chevena, then the Yakujon to Mevere. Bena the Dilisha order, Binju, Jachung Poo or rather. Shopal Puro Oski, didn't go Puyaga, Dova Shujin, Sangalba, that Purtuya Doctor, Puya de Jeje, and to Purvana, then go Shopper the Tata and Nuba Purtu and Nuba made there's the Purtu, then the Purtuaje, to Purtu subject called Boba Geje, Sanma, Dumban, Chiloma Don, then Yabu Purmado, then go Shidre in Ayores, Jeza, the Amago Coron. Yabuji Nuba Purmado Bardo Pani Sana Shagorwa, a Dinashi, Nanzulia, a dressing dressing to Otaya, Shins or some that Shandachi or that deep Pasha, Shandachi or some time better. She said, Timbu Yago Machavachilla, Tinishanda Cheva, and Dine Yago Mevaro. Dine is that the Timbu Dambone, never Timbu Yago Kitchen with that, Nama Yorgo said Yanka Tara, just come show some your order.
This too is excellent advice to hold in mind, because this is a mistake that can be made all too easily. You're meditating on a meditation topic, and you have an emotional response to that topic. And perhaps this happens several times. You feel change within you. And perhaps you feel, because of the strength of that emotional response, you feel influenced by that throughout the day. And you think, I've attained realization. I'm ready to move on. So this can very easily happen. So here, this shows again the need to rely on the guidance of a spiritual teacher, because the spiritual teacher, through their own far greater experience, will be able to recognize whether their student has gained deep enough transformation or not. So for example, we take an illustration from the natural world. So a young chick may have the wish to use these two extensions on either side of their chest and see what these wings can do. So the chick may try and rise a bit in the nest and see if these wings are worthwhile. And maybe there's a bit of liftoff. But if the chick then gets a little bit overconfident and says, now I'm independent, I'm ready to make my own decisions, and launches itself off the nest, it may well not go so well. Rather, the parents need to parent and encourage the chick when it's time to make a few jumps, and guide the chick when it is and is not time to leave the nest. Because the parents will know better based on their own experience of when it is the time to leave the nest. So similarly, we should rely on the guidance of our spiritual teacher.
Training Shuzana, the training jelly and Jemadiwa Shu, Denege, that young Japat, the name of water is Shuzana, Shudu and the Carson was in a ye Casso Troye Matuba, see the Troye Matubas, Lam Yamlin, you coma de Yaku Majuba, Jema de Yakuyan, Yomar Cezanne cannot that Yaku Chang is the Yaku Yamlin Chevras, Cezanne. Troye Matuba, Cezanne Lam Goma, the Yamle Yakuchi Majubala, and Chima Combine Lamdi and Yamle de Yakuyon to Mares.
From what is recounted here, we can imagine that Karmapa's student was perhaps a little headstrong, because when his teacher told him, repeat the previous one, this seemed to be insufficient to get him to give up his wish to go further. And he had to be told again, there is nothing beyond it. So again, we need to rely on the guidance of those who have walked this path before us. Moreover, we need to understand that the Lamrim is presented in a specific sequence, and each meditation topic is not separate. The prior topics influence all the latter topics. So therefore, the prior topics have to be sufficiently cultivated so that the latter topic can be built. That particular level of foundation needs to be sufficiently cultivated for the latter realization to come about. Otherwise, one will just make a lot of effort, gain imprints, but one's mind will not change.
Dati nga zo nyamlen cheba ne sosugi sem nyamlen tangpo samlo tangtang dosi ne nyamlen de yakbo chungpa ne de nipa di pina nga zo chiwa mitabe ki samlo tangtang di yakbo ra chungpa ne dene je diwa ma di de kiawa chima ane she kowe dunga la tarya ke samdaya da yakbo di yakbo chungpa ne nge chunga samba yakbo ki tuya nge chunga samba yakbo ki tuya na dela dene jamni je diya yakbo ki tuya chegurwa chizan sosugi la nge chunga yakbo ki matuba na dine jam니지 공부하나 잠니지의 약부기 두고 말해. 제가 dine 자다 내중 약부기 봐라. 근데 코어기 견통하고 그걸 코어를 견통하고 이 약부 마통만 한 먹거나 내중 약부기 두고 말해지. 제가 코어기 견 약부 통하라. 다지 치워 미다 봤으면 치료에게 치워에는 가와기고래 데리기고 데리기다 가르가르여 봐서 디순디스도 약부 신고 그래지. 제가 dine 자다 가지고 나망함에게다 가지고만 롭정을 봐서 많이 충충충진이야 체체 발로저 제바나시 냠내 갑래이네 셈리야 곰베 갑래이네 당보 충자되기 바야고 곰디 야고시데 야야 체체다 곰야디 송고로와 진짜 진짜 당보 충충의 야보 마신 바나 다 아니 체디 야고신야 가보로와 진짜 디 이제 개체 못 차고래 마저 삼는 나라 가려서 나다 중앙에 다디 개충충 딜레데 체지 곰나디 개체 딜레도 삼비 벤데 시내를 곰바나 때 현다디게 냠나마서 시내 야고 주선다 아니 지게 가리나 야고 용투 그랬으면 됐습니다. 직현다디 미다바데만 동반이 도선데 니네 야고 제투도 왔으면 동반 또 오라서 되네게 첨부디게 주위에 삼다 야고디 삼다 청와디게 야고 맞지디 얘네 첨부디 야고 주 투여가 요마로 매완자데 요한 매바레체 제가 되는자 당보니 마 셈을 마서는 가지 냠리 림바데 충준의 야체를 셔셔셔는 로고를 해서 그러다 나님부터 순고를 받아.
Key point to understand with this graduated sequence of training, which is the Lamrim, is that there is a particular sequence to train in, and each sequence influences the next level, and then each preceding sequence influences the higher level. So the first, the second, the third, the fourth topics, for example, are all influence the fifth topic, and then the first 5 influence the 6th, and so forth. One other way to make this clear, with the cultivation of paths, with cultivation of meditation, one is cultivating one's mind. And we know one mind influences the other. So therefore, as one engages in the training and develops each level of training, those influence the next level. So don't see these topics as unrelated, but they are directly related. And the key point then to take from this is that if you do not develop sufficiently the prior level, the next level will not come about. But if you do develop the prior level, the next level will come about comparatively effortlessly. So being here, you have been brought here under the power of your imprints. It's your imprints that mean you have an interest in the Dharma, an interest in this particular expression of the Dharma. Be aware of that. See the importance of cultivating imprints, but also be aware that imprints influence how we think, what we like, what we dislike, and so forth. So don't allow yourself to be deceived by imprints, even virtuous ones, because it's all too easy to follow one's disposition, one's inclination, one's likes, and strive in a particular topic of the Dharma that you are drawn towards. So some people are very drawn towards bodhicitta, some are very drawn towards developing the wisdom, realizing emptiness, others are very drawn to develop calm abiding. Whatever it may be, understand that those are virtuous topics, they are important to cultivate, but to be able to cultivate them comes about independent on the gathering of the complete accumulation of causes. And in terms of sequence of meditation, this starts a long way back. So to present this in a way that's hopefully very clear, By meditating on the impermanence of this life, one develops through this a mind that abandons the concerns of this life. One's thought process is no longer dominated by attaining the pleasures of this life and overcoming the problems of this life, which means one's mind becomes very focused on the Dharma, focused on lives beyond this, and thereby one is engaged explicitly in the accumulation of causes that will lead to good results in lives to come. That is required. So one has developed now a renunciation to this life alone. One needs to develop that mind much further to recognize that whatever result I gain in my next life will not alone be a state of lasting happiness. Because as long as I'm bound in samsara, I will suffer. But to be able to then think about the sufferings of samsara in its entirety, one first has had to have let go of the problems and pleasures of this life. If one hasn't been able to renounce the pleasures of one life, how can one renounce the pleasures of lives to come? If one hasn't renounced the insignificant problems of this life, how can one renounce samsara in its entirety? One cannot. One has to move in a sequence. Then similarly, when one does develop definite emergence, so whereby one renounces the suffering and the causes of suffering, in other words, one renounces the afflictions, then one cultivates definite emergence, the determination to cultivate the causes that will lead to liberation, because I do not want to suffer. So this is self-compassion, where one has compassion for oneself, recognizing that due to the strength of my afflictions, I keep creating the causes for suffering, despite wanting happiness. This is the mind of definite emergence, or the mind of self-compassion. Only if that is developed can one then develop actual compassion for others. Because if one does not have actual compassion for oneself, how can one have compassion for others? If one oneself does not want to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, how can we really say we want this for others? And in particular, all others, those that we currently despise. So therefore, the generation of actual compassion can only follow the generation of definite emergence. Likewise, the development of the wisdom realizing emptiness. This can only come about when one has a sufficient strength of mind, a focus, to let go of following the thoughts of desire and the thoughts of aversion, attachment to the pleasures of this life, attachment to the pleasures of samsara. Only then can one be really looking at the nature of reality. Similarly, it's only when one has truly recognized that it's our afflictions that are always our enemy can we apply ourselves sufficiently to the antidotes, particularly this antidote. So from this presentation, I encourage you to apply yourself skillfully, intelligently, to cultivating the complete web of causes that are required so as to actually cultivate the Dharma within.
다 치외지 최마도바 관계에 판도 민두스 베데니기 삼다제다 데네자다 치미 개와 치미 된다라야 한 치외님네 자고 제고도 선배다 삼노디 니게야기 된다라 조다 그신도 슈바 차상다 된다 디게 호고를 해세다 조디 송고르다 딩한저 예바도 개고에 디데스 지난디 야고치마 개바이나 능한 저게 람냠네 고마디에 야고 용투 말레스 지난디네 자당보디 야고 지금야저
Just to summarize, the conclusion that these meditations need to bring us to is to recognize that the pleasures and problems of this life have no real value, have no real meaning, they have no real significance, and therefore let go of them. See them for what they are, as trivial, as meaningless, and lift your focus beyond this life.
당저 니엔쟁 저 가르 대선 맞는 람림 세디 다딘 망아저 레 당보와 당보는 냠는 지겐 지글이야 삼당하지 심바지마 지게 순고로와 디네 자다 당보 코로나가 저 가르송 송선에 지나다 취지어 거바 거비 최제나 판도 여바다 아니 지 최제고비 고바 김제 판도 여바디게 바시 진의 최제고바다 최퇴고를 퇴비 판에 맞여 봐나 아니 최만년 봐나 안 용된 쇼레세 되게 삼다야지 손으로 니제라 아니 가르송서 된다 지나도 최님은 제발이야 기회 신이야 고치고 우리 제가 기회 신인데 디르스네 기회 신인 때 나든지 공고를 기회 신인 때나 검주 직송 거래 니제라다 아주 가르송거래세네 제자다 아주게 단주 빌리티세야디 간스레센 단주 응어송 안데 다주게 안지게 톱가와 임바 삼다야다 단주 된체보 임바 삼다를 공고를 사실 됐송을 근데 디제라다 저게 치와 미다바 삼다데 지 치와를 잡아기 별로디 예고를 했어야 되네 내내 아주게 저게 대치왕이 되네 치와 검수들 삼당이 치와 검나에 관해 무슨지네 한 치와에 봐 남친의 치외제 최마도 그냥 강하게 판도 요 말에서비 루신의 삼당의 공부를 해서지 더 검나를 말씀하나 디바도 가서 쉬사발에 되네다 되네 자당은 그 기회 신인 때나 검나 간스 공부를 다또 검나되게 기회 신인 때나도 배제 먹고 저러 와다 쉬고 먹고 자사서 검단 삼단 땅 투여스가 요 말 고고라 지다대 기회 신인도 검야 간스 공부를 해야다 안디젤이야 단주기 리딘디 검나 간스 공부를 해서 단주 된치와 검나 간을 해야 안디젤아 안치와 미다바 치와라 잡아기 별로 치와 미다와 검진의 치와라 잡아기 별로 예야디 근데 다시바로스 마소나 나다 치외제 최마도 강하게 판도 매바디 검나디 간에서 해야 돼 당도 된선 마소는 시로지가 주다 쉬차와리 들이봐서 제사디 거출 뒤샤반다다 디니 시 된선시 기회 신인 대소 검당 단절류 된치보 검당 근데 치와 미다베시 근데 치와 된별로 검당 된 치외제 최마도 강하게 판도 매바디 섬다나지 시차거와 시요 마보샤유시 시로지 기회 신인 대소 검나 직제 단주기 된 검나 이제 근데 치와 미다바 치와 미다고 검네 치위게 제가 치와를 잡아기 별로 기타 직제 되네 치외도 최마도 신강하게 판도 매발에 세 검나지 온두시네 저기 대저 검나를 시로제 차로도
So we've spent nearly 2 years so far on the Lamrim, and we only page 89. So there's a lot of text to cover and a lot that has been covered. But we've gone through this slowly because this is the process that each and every liberated being has gone through. They've needed to start at the very beginning, which is to gain firstly an overall understanding of the Dharma. Because it's through coming to understand the Dharma in general that one gains conviction on the benefits of cultivating the Dharma within and the faults of not cultivating the Dharma within. So this overall knowledge of the Dharma is really the starting point, so that one comes to see actually there is value in the Dharma and there's great loss if it's not cultivated. That mere recognition, though, does not lead to a change in our values, a change in our priorities, a change in how we live our life. To bring that about, one then needs to start at the beginning, training one's mind in every topic. Hence, the very first topic is, topic of the Dharma is having come to recognize the importance of the Dharma, I need to come to know the Dharma. To know the Dharma, I need a spiritual teacher, someone who is learned in the Dharma. But I don't only need to learn the Dharma, I need to cultivate it within. Therefore, I need a spiritual teacher who not only can teach me, but who can guide me. So I need a spiritual guide, someone who can guide me in the cultivation of knowledge and the integration of that knowledge, guide me in how to transform my mind. Hence, the very first topic, how to rely on a spiritual teacher, where we came to see the qualities of the spiritual teacher, how the student needs to rely, the qualities the student needs in order to be able to rely, and to ensure, therefore, that we keep developing those. Moreover, we come to When we recognize the qualities that a teacher needs, we come to appreciate the tremendous kindness he has shown to us throughout lifetimes and the benefits he brings to us. And then we look at how to rely on the teacher, which really comes down to fulfilling his deepest heart wish, which is to cultivate his teachings within our own mind. Then we move to the second key point of the Dharma, which is to understand just what we have achieved, so as to counteract our taking this rebirth for granted, seeing this as commonplace, assuming we had one in the life immediately prior to this, and assuming we'll have another go in our next life. This delusion needs to be shaken up. So rather there, we are presented in the second topic of the Dharma with the great rarity of a precious human rebirth, and how very difficult it was to achieve this, and therefore how difficult it will be to achieve again. And its incredible value. So we come to recognize that each of us holds this precious jewel in our hands, and how foolish it would be to not utilize it. This then leads into the next topic, the impermanence of this opportunity. So we've come to recognize this precious human rebirth as really being an opportunity to cultivate the Dharma within, but this opportunity is impermanent. Therefore, I have to practice the Dharma. The first decision. I have to practice the Dharma from right now. The second decision. And I need to let go of everything else and practice only the Dharma. In other words, ensure that that's the third decision. In other words, ensure that whatever I'm doing, my mind, I'm aware of my mind, ensuring it's not being influenced by the afflictions, that they are not continuing to deceive me, but I'm rather keeping the Dharma topics in my mind, in other words, minds of virtue, unafflicted minds. This then is the final topic that we've come to thus far. The fourth topic, how to rely on the teacher, the precious human rebirth, its impermanence, and now nothing but the Dharma is what I am going to engage in. So thank you, then we can conclude there for this morning. Thank you.